This is the Apex Lifestyles podcast, right? And one of the things that Dennis and I are curious about is like, how do you define your Apex? What does that mean to you?
For me, it's doing something that my kids can be proud of. But everyone had a love for Run-DMC, and I was just really glad to be in the mix to actually work with my EPs to explain some of the story narratives that I felt were super important, some of the people that were part of their history that were super important. And it was a really good camaraderie with working with all the different groups within the Run-DMC family and making that happen. So I was really proud of that.
It was so well done. It's one of my favorite documentaries, and you really tapped into all the key elements. And I tell my students, anybody, it is a must-see.
Shout out to our director and the EPs. I was just booking, but I have to say we would have these great meetings, and I think that's one of the things I love so much about it. And thank you for saying that. Being in a creative brainstorm and thinking about where are we taking this, because it was a docuseries, it wasn't a feature.
I have a really interesting question. You started at Nickelodeon and then at Nick at Nite. And, what are some insights that you could share with the listener that help shape your path, starting there? Like, start from the beginning, and they have to have learned some things at that first gig, right?
Yeah, I think it's the willingness to learn other departments. It's the willingness to understand not just your job, but everyone else's job around you. You always want to be learning. You never want to just be a cog in the wheel. You want to understand what the full automobile is all about.
And welcome to the Apex Lifestyles podcast. I'm your host, Bob G. DMD, and I'm here with my co-host, as always,
Dennis V. What's going on today, Bob?
Hey, you know what? We have a special guest today. Hold on, buckle up, listeners, because it's going to be a fun ride today. And, I was going to tell you, we had a really great guest on a couple days ago, Dennis, right?
Yes, we did.
And I'm really excited to introduce you guys to him. But before that, what we're doing here today is, I'd like to welcome a really inspirational person. We have today with us a powerhouse guest who embodies drive, moxie, and enterprise. She's a multimedia businesswoman, a force to be reckoned with. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to Raquel Bruno.
Raquel.
Hello. So nice to be here.
Raquel, it is an absolute honor to have you here. You are one of the most amazing individuals I've ever met. Your journey is nothing short of inspiring. Before we dive in, we're going to go down to the basics. Tell us about your early days in the entertainment industry.
So I like to tell this story, and thank you for having me here. It's an absolute honor. And Dennis, I know that we met, funny enough, through the pandemic, and I've just grown to love you more and more every time that we get to chat. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Bob. And I'm excited to share the stories with you. So I started out as I am still a musician's kid. My mom's a jazz singer. My dad is a songwriter. I actually went to up in Boston, the New England Conservatory. And so my first memories growing up were on a studio recording floor. And all I really knew were being in the shadows of great musicians and watching them perform and speak a language that isn't one with words. It's one with music and vibe and sound. And so I always knew that I wanted to be around musicians some way, somehow, or creatives in a sense. And so when MTV launched, honestly, I just was starstruck. And I was one of the first, I actually saw the very first video launch, Video Killed the Radio Star. I know I'm dating myself, but we were one of the lucky ones in the neighborhood to have it. And I went, that's kind of where I want to be. Whatever this is, I need to be involved with that. So when I was in high school and my guidance counselor handed me a piece of paper and said, well, what do you want to be on here? I said, it's not on here. I don't know what it is, but it's not on here. And so I knew that Nickelodeon, and I know that Nickelodeon is going through some tough stuff right now, but I can tell you that my experience was always just nothing short of amazing. I knew that I had one contact, friends of my parents' friend worked at CBS. They knew someone at Nickelodeon. So when I was a senior in high school, I took the phone, back then we didn't have computers. I had the phone number and I just dialed this random number and kind of pitched myself and said, hi, my name is Raquel Bruno and I'm interested in doing an internship. And they were like, well, how old are you? And I said, at the time I was 16. And they said, oh, you can't work here. You're not old enough yet. So call us back in a year, just kind of get me off the phone, mark the date down, called a year to the day. And I got magically put over to a woman, this woman named Susan Kearns, who was running acquisitions. And she said, wait, I'm sorry, how old are you? And you called when? And I immediately had a meeting with her and I became her intern as a freshman in college. And there's many stories about Susan. She was my first mentor and we have since lost her, unfortunately, to cancer. But I carry everything I do. A lot of it is in her honor. But she couldn't believe that I was a 17-year-old that had called a year before and still went ahead and called, marked it in my little journal. And that's really what started for me, getting my start working at Nickelodeon. By the time I graduated, I worked at Nickelodeon. I had freelanced at Comedy Central. And then right when I graduated, I was the assistant working at the same department.
Fantastic.
You talk about persistence, drive. You have it all. I mean, at 16, 17, to know that you have that will to get where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And you didn't wait till 17 years old a week. You waited for midnight on your birthday and you made that call.
I did. Amazing. And I also, I probably wouldn't be allowed today, but I started babysitting at 10, 11 neighbors' kids. I started working at a deli and I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue. I always had a very strong work ethic. My parents weren't just musicians, they were teachers in the city. So I'm used to 3 different jobs in one person. So that was kind of instilled in me at a young age. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I just knew I wanted to somehow backdoor it into MTV somehow, some way. And I did. But yes, there's a reason my company is called Drive. And when I started, I literally looked up adjectives of myself. That's how the name, I said, well, let's talk about who I am. And when Drive was on that, the thesaurus page, I went, there it is.
Raquel, is it difficult in this industry to make it without that type of drive? Because I've spoke to many actors and they talk about how doors consistently close. It can get frustrating. Do you have to just keep being persistent to making opportunities happen?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going through that right now. I'm going through a major shift in the industry and a major shift for my career and figuring out what's next. It's not easy to take a self journey and hold the mirror up and say, okay, well, what's not working right now? Outside voices are one thing, but to go inside and go, okay, well, what else is my skill set? So I can always be sustainable. And the funny thing is, I was just telling someone recently, I think it's Will Rogers, if I'm not mistaken. There was one cowboy actor who always went back to the job he did because he never felt that the acting was going to work out. I think it's Will Rogers, and he went back to work on the trains because he was like, oh, that acting thing is just going to be a fluke. But he still kept his work ethic. And even when he became the most famous, went back to work on the trains because he's like, well, this is what I know. And at least I feel like I know I always have a job. That right now is you always want to feel like you always have a job. So you have to always be consistent. You have to make your opportunities when people are saying no to your face. You have to go, okay, you might have said no today, but tomorrow, like with me, maybe it's a yes, or the landscape has changed, or the people have changed. If you know that you love something and you want to be in it, you just can't give up. As they say about the sales call, it's always that, a lot of people end their calls on the 9th call, but it's the 10th one that actually is the winner. So you have to have an ironclad stomach, a stubbornness about you, and also the willingness to be gritty and work. I mean, there isn't one thing I do for my company that I ask someone else to do. I'm always in the trenches working, and you always have to hustle. And so if you really truly want something to happen, you have to make your magic.
So it's not by accident that you've had your success. I mean,
I've had
you've worked
leads.
hard.
I've had leads. I've had the door open a little bit, and I literally had to kick the door down because nothing's been handed to me. And that's why sometimes it gets frustrating. And as a solopreneur, someone who launched their own business after being at Viacom for as long as I was, You have to be willing to get up, dust yourself off, and just keep going. I'm in that right now with creating a new part of my business. It is not easy work, and you challenge yourself, and you're going to have down days, and you'll be like, let me just throw my hands up and say, I can't do this. But then I look back and think of the people I might be able to help and influence, and the great talent I've had the opportunity to work with. So I've been really lucky, but I've also at the same time made my own luck, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. I believe that 100%. The more you work, the luckier you get, right?
Right.
So it creates situations that you can take opportunities on. I have a really interesting question. You started at Nickelodeon and then at Nick at Nite, and what are some insights that you could share with the listener that help shape your path? Starting there, like start from the beginning, and that you have to have learned some things at that first gig, right?
Yeah, I think it's the willingness to learn other departments. It's the willingness to understand not just your job, but everyone else's job around you. You always want to be learning. You never want to just be a cog in the wheel. You want to understand what the full automobile is all about. You want to understand, like, how is this car moving? How does marketing relate to production? How does production relate to publicity? How's publicity happen to be with the director of what's going on? So I think one thing that drives me crazy when I hear people say, well, that's not my lane, or that's not my job, or that's out of my pay scale. It literally boils my blood, because
it's one of my worst.
I can't stand it.
That.
I hate because it's like, well, then you don't want to be in this job, and you should find something else that you want to do, because you should wake up every day and go, okay, I'm on this show. And I may not love so I'll tell you a quick story. So when I went to work for Susan Kearns, I went into acquisitions, and I was an intern, and my entire summer, I joke about it all the time, I was sitting and I thought, I'm going to Nickelodeon. I'm going to be on sets. I'm going to, it's going to be exciting. I was in a filing room the whole summer. I hated it. I absolutely hated the internship. Didn't hate the people, but I didn't have the action. Like, I am like a type A personality. I need to be in it and in the mix, as you know. Dennis is laughing. But I had to sit there and learn all the players in the business, which helped me later down the road. So sometimes your worst jobs, or sometimes your worst bosses, are your greatest teachers. And I learned a tremendous amount that summer. I went, okay, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but it also helps me understand, okay, maybe this isn't what I want. It helps you find what you do want. So it's willingness to just understand what else is out there. And especially if you have an opportunity to work at a company, especially Viacom was amazing. I was able to work with some of the best in the business still to this day, the most creative people, and always willing to think out of the box, innovative. In fact, I go back, I just did my 24th VMA. I still go back to help out MTV networks because I just adore them, their family, and I have shorthand with them, which is a big thing. To have shorthand with colleagues is a big deal, so you don't have to say one thing. It's almost like my parents as musicians. I'm sure you have it in your business too. You just kind of give a look and they're like, yep, on it. And then you don't have to say anything. That is invaluable because you're all in it together and you know exactly how the thing is going to happen to be successful.
Right.
Raquel, let's not forget the launch of TV Land, the iconic TV Land, one of my favorites. How did you contribute to its success?
So working at Nickelodeon, we also had Nick at Nite. And I had amazing bosses. I had Susan Kearns, and I had another woman named Diane Rubina, who to this day, she was my first boss when I was an intern, then I was her assistant, and then she was my very first client when I opened Drive. So I'm connected with her, and also Day and Dominic, a shout out to the Nickelodeon team. We knew that we were, at that point, I moved over to, and it's funny because my husband will tell you the story, I moved over to watching, so going from being an intern and sitting in the filing cabinet room, reading everything. Then I went into being in my own little closet, watching all TV that came in, whether it was the Sonny and Cher show that I had to paper edit, or just, Joe Schmo in his backyard creating content. Everything was sent to me and another screener, this woman, Kelly, and we would sit there and see what do we possibly want to acquire. So I got a lot. My TV skills were perfect at that point. And at the time, my husband and I weren't together yet, and he said to me, because we were friends since college, he said, wait, you get paid to sit in a room and watch television? I said, I do. But after a while, you lose your social skills. that being said, the opportunity to expand Nick at Nite in essence and make it its own channel was exciting. And so one of the ways that I contributed was, we had to build out a 24-hour network. And so part of that was, well, we have the libraries we've acquired. There's, a lot of things that my boss was negotiating with Paramount and a lot of different people. So one of the things that we created was no one had seen a few things happen. I was able to launch Puffapalooza, which was all the Sid and Marty Krofft stuff for Nick at Nite. That was the first time anyone had seen anything since the 70s. And then when TV Land came around, and I actually came up with that idea. That's a funny story. I'll tell you in a second. But with our crew. But with TV Land, my job was to basically go back in time and find all the old ads that aired on TV, kind of as placement holders throughout the show, because we were still building the channel, and we called them retromercials. So everything across the board. And so we aired it, and then after about a few months, and there was a lot of talent, and then it was like, okay, well, actually, wait a second. There's SAG got involved in after, but we had to figure out, like, how do you walk through that space, brand new network, content programming, but this hasn't been done before. So I had the ability of, I was able to go find amazing commercials that hadn't been seen locally, politically. We had political ads back then that were a lot of fun and crazy, not like it is today. And it was just an amazing opportunity to unearth all this programming. There was no YouTube at the time, so this was the first time a lot of these had been unearthed and since they originally aired.
So cool. So, we just had the writer's strike, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the pandemic happened too. So you got two big speed bumps. How did you navigate and pivot and adapt to those situations in your career? Right.
So I'm going to add a third. I'm going to add a third. Not a speed bump, but definitely a slowdown. I also was pregnant with my second. So there was running a business.
Right.
So I was lucky enough to be with Sci-Fi Wire for a part of it. A few things. I had American Idol, which just launched. So I was about to do this huge American Idol live in person, and we were about to go live, and then the pandemic hit and everything got shut down. We were one of the first TV shows that pivoted and actually were doing everything from Zoom, from home. So I'm very proud of that. We helped navigate, what does that look like? How do we work with talent? We had to scrub everything down before we sent anything to talent so that we can capture like a Darius Rucker or what have you, or anyone at Ryman. So I was a big part of that behind the scenes, and I was very proud of that because that had never been done before, especially in the history of American Idol, and working with the EPs on that was crucial. The other part of it was Sci-Fi Wire. We were on retainer with them, and I was so happy. So we were able to move it forward. We did audio stuff. We were able to do, asking talent to, walk with talent, doing different things with Sci-Fi Wire, ask them questions. We were able to cover junkets that were eventually all on digital and virtual. So we just found a way. And I also moved over, which was the very beginning of Drive. I went back into management, and I was helping to manage a few people, one of them being Brad Gillis from Night Ranger, who is still a friend to this day. He had this huge music library, and we got together and we were figuring out how to, because, it was the first time. So a few things, working with him, and I worked with John Oates. He had seen all the things that I had worked on, and John Oates and I helped him EP Oates Songfest, and we had every walk of life you can imagine contributing, and we raised funds for Feeding America because there were so many folks that had become food insecure. So that was how I kept myself busy. It was like, and I did a lot of those types of basically helping people through the pandemic through programming, because that's one thing. In wartime or not, entertainment's still needed across the board. And so pandemic was really a war for all of us, and we're still kind of going through it. So there was that part of it. And then we finally get through that. VMA, same thing. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, and I had booked a ton of people, a lot of artists, to actually watch a very amended part of the VMAs from home, and we had stand cams and all the rest of it. So we just figured out, how do we create what we do live in person to be virtual and still give people access to talent. So then when the strikes hit, I think it's just, unfortunately, it's really contributed to a lot of the downturn that we're all feeling right now, which is one of the reasons why I'm starting a new arm of my business, because you just can't count on what's going to happen in the industry. You have to hustle and figure out what's next.
Raquel, can you discuss the new arm of your business? What is really interesting, you would have made a great basketball player because you really know how to pivot from situation to situation. And I'm amazed what you did during the pandemic, where, it was extremely frustrating, and just how you pivoted, and now you're recognizing that there's some changes once again in the industry. Mm-hmm. What's this new arm?
So I had a couple of projects that didn't come to fruition. People are afraid to spend money right now. Their budgets are going by the wayside. Networks are, streamers are getting rid of departments. So I'm seeing this trending, and it's not a good trend for us. It'll eventually come back. But right now, at this moment, with 2 kids under 10, I have to figure out what to do. Now, mind you, I DJ, so I do Twitch. I also started that in the middle of the pandemic, and I do it 2 to 3 times a week, and it's great because it's something I always did. It's 4 years in for that. So this is something that's continued post-pandemic, and we've built a great community there. Well, I felt like I know a lot of the creators and creatives, brilliant minds that I've had the opportunity of working with, and then friends of friends of friends. Literally last week, I was sitting around and I'm going, all right, I need to bring people together, because if I'm feeling this and I've been doing this for a long time, then I know I'm not alone in it. So sure enough, same thing. I went back to the drawing board. I thought, okay, I was trying to think of what I would call this Zoom call, whatever it is. And I thought about my DJing, and I thought about who I am, what I do, and In the Mix came up. And the other part of my arm is going to be called Thrive with Drive. So basically, I know I'm really good at mentoring. I have a couple of mentor sessions coming up at NJ Pack for a group of young, amazing executives that want to get into it even further. They're all building their crafts and their profession. So I'm going to be speaking on a panel about that. And so I just felt like I needed to breathe a connective tissue for a lot of folks, especially creatives that kind of just go into isolation and they just create and build and do. And then we've lost that part of our social skills, especially because I still think we're just still coming out of COVID, even though things have opened up. We're still a little, triggered. So I literally I had a friend of mine, I came up with In the Mix. I had an amazing friend named Sam Jennings who used to work with Prince. He created the logo within like 10 minutes. And I put it up on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I had overwhelmingly within 2 days, I had 100 people reach out going, I need to be on this. I want to be on this. So what I'm doing right now is I'm continuing that with people connecting one another. We had a great call that Dennis was on Friday. We had 55 people on, and I had everybody pitch 30 seconds, 45 seconds or less, who they are, what they do. But the other aspect of it is I asked people to send me another set of questions. And the main reason I did that was not so much because I do want to know what everyone's up to. It's getting folks to get out of their cycle of thinking every day, sitting in it, the same old, you kind of go on your hamster wheel. I am guilty of it. Where I wanted folks to start thinking about, well, put the spotlight on you for a minute. What song are you influenced by right now? If you could leapfrog to anywhere in your sector or another sector, what would it be? Is there a skill set that you're not utilizing that you'd like to learn? So I can also help connect the dots down the road. So with that, I'm offering one-on-one coaching, mentoring, helping people find their voice, because everyone is talent no matter what they do in life, and figuring out how to be comfortable in that talent and bring it out to the masses, whether it's a director, a TV director that just wants to maybe go into publicity, or a graphic designer that wants to go into FX, or whatever it is. Helping those folks find their voice. And someone had asked me earlier on a call, well, what's your superpower? My superpower is seeing the talent in people and connecting them.
That is so amazing. I love the fact that you're doing that. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I think there's a huge need for that. In fact, I could maybe pick your brain a little bit later too, if you'd let me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But because this is all new for us, I'm a dentist usually, right? So the production thing is not my forte, so to speak, but I'm learning, as we go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, what was impressive to me was you were talking about MTV and all these things, MTV is the hub of music culture, and, you helped create some unforgettable events there. You coordinated the talent for major MTV events. What was it like behind the scenes during, the MTV Video Music Awards and movie awards and all that? Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, that must have been really an amazing time and a lot of work too.
I jokingly say when I worked at MTV Radio, when I eventually left Nickelodeon, Nick at Nite, VH1, and then went to MTV, I was the talent director for MTV Radio. And the one thing that was tough about being there was that we were an audio medium in a visual world. So we didn't necessarily always get the respect that I felt we should have. And so that's why I was always championing for radio. I come from radio. I ran my radio station in college. So radio, and as you can see, DJing, audio is a big thing for me. So funny. I think if I wanted to be a vet, and then I realized that I couldn't put an animal down, and I was terrible at math. And then the other thing I was always just amazed by were the sound engineers that created the sounds for Star Wars. I saw something on like PBS one time and how they created all of those sounds, and I thought maybe one day I'll do that. Or become, a music supervisor. There's lots of different things I like to do that I haven't done yet.
A lot of different levels to audio, right? You know what? I want to know how they make that sound for the lightsabers, right?
I'm going to try to find it. It might be still living on YouTube. And they actually had a camera crew go around and they had them replicate the folks that created those sounds. Like, especially when you have the troopers, like the sound of the machines, it's literally like some of them are like trucks going by. There's a couple of them you just go, oh my God, that's what that is.
Right. And then Darth Vader's voice,
No, totally. Or even like, we were asking Peter Mayhew, I was working with a few sci-fi people. And my husband was so excited to meet Chewbacca. And my husband was like, what is and he goes, it's a brown bear. And he knew exactly what it was. The fact that his sound was a brown bear was hilarious.
That's fantastic.
But that being said, I forgot what you'd even asked me, but what was it?
I was talking about, we were talking about the MTV Music Awards and the video, the movie awards and what it was like backstage.
I got off track.
And well, you said Star Wars, so I had to jump down
that
track.
I'm a Star Wars fan too. Where's my Star? Here's my Star Wars record tote is right here. Always right behind me.
So speaking of that, your vibe back there is so cool.
This is my pop culture wall. You can find us twitch.tv/DJ AVIVA. And Aviva is my middle name. But if I showed you the count, like I'm just surrounded by vinyl. I'm a vinyl head. When everyone told me, get rid of your vinyl, I held on for dear life. And now I'm glad I did because it's back with a vengeance. I might have a percentage in Record Store Day being able to I'm not making anything on it, but the fact that so many people love vinyl, I mean, we have over 3,100 followers right now just on Twitch following me every time. So fantastic. I'm very grateful. Shout out to the Chaos crew on Twitch. But we all become vinyl heads.
Dennis, can you point out the vinyl right above your head there? Like we have vinyl up on the walls here and
I see we switch them but out. It's hard to, is that, who do you have?
Strictly Business, EPMD.
Of course you do.
And Parachut's in here.
Bob, who's above your head?
That's Diamante. She's a rock and roll singer.
Not Diamante Galas, no?
No, Diamante.
Oh, Diamante.
Diamante.
Got it. Yes. Okay. I went back in time.
We swap them out so that it doesn't get too busy back here.
I love it. Well, trust me, one day when you come here to Jersey, we'll show you what it's all about with all the vinyl. It's a little bit crazy. We're trying to, my poor husband is like, can we get our living room back? And I'm trying to build shelves to hold it all. I mean, it's literally surrounds me. And right here on your kids, this is all 45s. And this is like what we call
it's a museum.
It is a museum. And it's so funny. My old boss at MTV, Michelle Roberts, used to say, when are you opening the 80s museum? So I used to run a zine as well when I was at Nickelodeon, called Aquatool. And so I ran that on top of it. So I was a punk rock kid, and I again, it's kind of, there's a theme, right? I love everyone I'm drinking my coffee, sorry. I love connecting creatives, and there were a lot of people that were great writers, and we started a zine. I did that for about 5 different zines, and it was great. It was a tower and all that good stuff. Anyway, so VMAs, we used to do what was called the VMA Radio Forum, and it was my entire summer. I didn't have a summer because, VMAs are historically always used to be in September. They moved them up after 9/11 to August. So there was always a little bit of timing and making sure we were being respectful because we all, especially in New York, we went through it. And so at the VMAs, we were the radio forum that was the day before. I had to program 20 live radio stations. I'm trying to remember who was up in Boston at the time. 23 different, and I guarantee you DMC probably remember this because he's been to a few of them, Dennis. But it was hip hop, alt rock, and pop. And they were all live for, I'm going to say, 8 hours, something crazy. And I had to keep that room going at all times. So I had about 100 artists in a room. Some of the best collaborations came from it. I have a photo of like Mary J. Blige and Duran Duran kind of like literally bowing to one another and saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Like we had Moby in the room. We had Jessica Simpson. We had a lot of different people. We had, you name it, they were there. The Roots, a lot of artists that were just starting out came through, but we had every type of, and I guarantee you, if you talk to an artist from back then, they'll remember those radio rooms because it was the most wild room you've ever seen. You know, as chaotic as it was, I had to create a system where all of my talent escorts had to know what seat was open to take them, and it was literally like round robin, and you had to find a way to get to a seat that was live and that wasn't preoccupied by another talent. But we made it work, and it got to the point I had talent that weren't even on the VMAs, but they had a new single to promote. They had a new album to promote. They had a film coming out because it wasn't just music. I booked all types of talent, and we had some of the most amazing pop culture moments. So because of that, I still go back to run their red carpet for digital. So anything that the kids are watching literally on their phones, they are watching it usually through the lens of what we're doing. If we were doing a stand cam or what have you, it's myself and my team pulling talent to shout out to the fans that are watching.
Raquel, before I get into my next question, I just have to ask you, have you ever been starstruck?
Yes, I have actually. I was starstruck a couple of times, but I had to contain myself. I had booked Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode 3 times before I could actually go and meet him because I had been a fan since late 80s. I had been obsessed with Depeche Mode my whole life. I eventually also went on to meet my idols like Gary Newman and Martha Davis, and I got to become friends with the one and only Judd Nelson, which is another funny story, and still to this day my friend. So there were moments where I'll sit there going, oh my, if you had asked my 12-year-old self that I'd be having dinner with one of my, like they're like family now, I'd be like, are you crazy? There's no way I'm going to know, Bender from Breakfast Club. But it's true, and we've had Passover Seder together. Like, that's the craziness of this. But there have been a couple times where I got to meet like LL Cool J, and I've worked with him many times, or just getting, bringing Alicia Keys for one of her very first interviews, and she's still the same amazing person from day one. There are those moments that you're just so excited. I think working with outside of when I left MTV with Drive, I think working with Sting and Stevie Wonder for You and a Message of Peace, that hands down might be my moment of going, okay, that I don't even know what to say, and had to keep my cool because they're just legends. They're just legends and everything they do.
Absolute legends. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of legends, you probably know where I'm going with this. I'm a hip hop head.
Yes.
And my 12-year-old self, I remember my mother bringing me my first hip hop album, Run-DMC. And I've had the pleasure of meeting DMC. We are going to be announcing a really cool event with him coming up very soon. The King of Queens documentary, an enthralling project. This hip hop trio, Run-DMC, Jam Master Jay. How did you capture the essence of this on the screen?
So I was very lucky that one of my former interns, who now is an executive at Viacom, she was working with, one of her former colleagues was looking for a talent producer. And it's this woman, Michelle Budnick, who ended up bringing me into the mix and working with Believe Entertainment. Great guys, Bill Masterson. They had been working on this for quite some time. And when I had my first call with Michelle, I said, listen, I'm not wearing my Adidas today, but I am wearing my white sneaks. I also am a huge Run-DMC fan. And through the years, being able to work with Daryl was just brilliant. I had him many times come through MTV Radio, and I was probably starstruck for that as well, but he's just such a down-to-earth guy that it was just so easy to work with him and almost forget of who he is. And so and working next to MTV News all the time. Like we were always literally working hand in hand, especially for launching a lot of the hip hop folks. So having that experience, and I like to pride myself in knowing that I was able to mentor some great people. She said to Michelle, who basically brought all the people in for all the pieces from, she was the production manager and ran everything. She said, you need to know Raquel. She's worked with every hip hop person every artist, every legend. And I work with a lot of them, and I still to this day talk to a lot of the publicists who really are. Publicists don't get enough love. They're really responsible for putting their client in front of the bookers, in front of the producers. And I've worked with some of these folks for a long time, and they're brilliant. So Michelle said, hey, I want to introduce you to the EPs of the project, and that's Believe, and that's Bill. And they said, look, you're perfect for this. And I'm very proud to say I was able to bring in, because of my work at MTV, I worked with Eminem before. Eminem did this because of the love he has for the guys. Of course, Beastie Boys, the same. But I was able to bring in the folks that I had worked with for so long. And it was not that it was an easy ask, because coordinating all that is never easy, but there's already, Run-DMC are legendary. And especially since the pandemic, not everybody and a lot of it, there was still a little bit of the pandemic stuff happening. Not everybody wanted to actually be in person. So we just had to work through all the logistics of it all. But everyone had a love for Run-DMC. And I was just really glad to be in the mix to actually work with my EPs to explain some of the story narratives that I felt were super important, some of the people that were part of their history that were super important. And it was a really good camaraderie with working with all of the different groups within the Run-DMC family and making that happen. So I was really proud of that.
It was so well done. It's one of my favorite documentaries, and you really tapped into all the key elements. And I tell my students, anybody, it is a must-see.
Shout out to our director and the EPs. I was just booking, but I have to say we would have these great meetings, and I think that's one of the things I love so much about it. And thank you for saying that. Being in a creative brainstorm and thinking about where are we taking this, because it was a docuseries, it wasn't a feature. That's always, trying to figure out what voices we're going to highlight and amplify within it that tell the story, because, telling that story always can take so many twists and turns. And it was just the right team to do this, and Bill leading it, being able to manage it and get everyone to sign off on what the right voice was for them too. That was a big part of it.
So cool.
Thank you.
We've also heard about some impressive bookings that you've done, like Spike TV's Guy's Choice, Jennifer Hudson's Oscar Party. How do you continually, add to that forward momentum all the time? How do you keep doing that?
I think working with the right people, having good relationships is a big part of it. And also being at square one with some of these folks when they want to build something. I work with one of the people I was just talking to earlier, this incredible director, John Scheinfeld. We've done Herb Albert Is together. We were in the middle of finalizing an incredible baseball film. There's just a lot of great stuff that comes out of his mind, and I'm always there to help shape it. We did the Gary Marshall doc for ABC right as the pandemic hit. So I think working with the right people, and again, having that shorthand where you understand what their needs are to help build a story and amplify that story is important. And I also, I didn't think I was a type A, but I think I don't like sitting still. I like being able to work on new projects, keeping things fresh. I like, telling stories. A big part of what I do, especially like working on Logo New Now Next Awards, very strongly an ally for LGBTQ plus, underserved voices for women right now. So I think wherever I can give a platform that also speaks to who I am as a person, there's been clients that I basically had to walk away from because it wasn't in line with my North Star. It wasn't in line with my morals. And I just couldn't just go after the money because I would have been miserable. I don't have a great poker face. So, and people that work with me know that. They're like, wait, something's wrong here.
Yeah, so important.
It's so important.
To stay true to yourself and not like sell out in that way, right? Dennis
I could have moved to LA. I could have moved to LA. I stayed a New York booker, even though I work a lot in Los Angeles. And shout out to all my amazing colleagues who do it in LA. They're busier than me, but I chose to stay East Coast because I also am very much you're going to know immediately, you know, what the answer is. Hey, I want to get so-and-so. Okay, you're not probably going to get this person, but let's look at another list of group of people that might fit this narrative for you. Not everybody can take that. A lot of folks like to hear yes, 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 and I'm just not a yes person. I'm more like, okay, let's be solution-based and figure out how do we get it to be the right project. That's not always easy to do, and it took me a long time to find that voice. I've always been me, authentically me, but sometimes I'm a little bit more direct and quickly so that people like, okay, let's not waste anyone's time. Let's get to what it is that you need and want. And with working with talent, it's a delicate dance, because my creatives and EPs are talent as well, and being able to deliver a message where it's like, okay, this person said no, and we've tried 3 times. We'll try again. Let's put it on the back burner for now and go back. And there's been times where like I reapproached somebody and we were able to get them finally like 6 months later. But it depends on when the project is. If it's a film, you can go back. If it's something that you're on a tight deadline, you can't always go back, and you kind of like the silence sometimes is a no. So there's so many different variables that go into each project. But I think creating and willing to take chances, which, you know, I'm not always great with change, which is why this new endeavor for me is a little bit like panic attack. And I'm not a panicky person, but it's taking a step where there may be no net. And yet I did it with drive. I'll do it again, figuring out, okay, what's next? So I think being open-minded, creating, which is a big reason why I sent folks these questions on this Zoom call we had the other day. I want people to think outside of the box, because that's where you find the magic. It's the space between that really is where the magic lives.
You're going to have 2 followers to add to your 3,100 on Twitch. DJ AVIVA on Twitch, an electrifying venture. What inspired you to step into the virtual DJ booth? How do you engage with your audience in this digital realm that is so foreign to when DJ AVIVA started years ago?
So I was a DJ in Manhattan for a long time, a lot of different places. And I think I mentioned kind of briefly, but I lived through 9/11 and I felt completely helpless. I saw the second plane hit and it was very intense. If there's a plane that's a little too low, it's a little daunting. But I remember I couldn't really do anything other than stand on the side of the West Side Highway and hold up a sign for all of the first responders that just said, "Thank you, we love you." Me not being able to do and help is a big part of it. And so when we shut down, and I had already been kind of like messing a little bit with Instagram, and I've had, these are my original Technique 1200s. I've had them since 98, got them on Canal Street. When the pandemic hit, I said, okay, I need people to feel connected. Very similar to what I'm doing now within the mix, where I just felt like isolation is the worst thing for human connection. And we were all isolated from our families, our friends, all of it. Dennis, I know you and I bonded through that because you helped me so much with, I was, pregnant. I wasn't able to go out and get things for my family because it was just too risky. And so that's why I love and adore you, because I remember one of the Costco calls, like you were walking around and you were like, okay, should I get you? Do you want this? Can I get you? And I didn't even know you, and you just had such a huge heart, Dennis. And the fact that you did that at a time where I was like, he is a gem, and I adore you for that. And again, if I didn't thank you enough, I'm now doing it publicly, because that's what bonded us. I saw in you a fellow soul traveler, and I thank you for that, because I couldn't do anything at that moment. Like that was a time where you couldn't get a slot on Fresh Direct. There's all of that. And I remember us talking, got connected by someone in the industry. So I thank you for that. So
Raquel, I just want to stop you 1 second, because I was in the mix the other day, and you were doing the same thing for people every day in the way you brought some of the most brilliant minds in the industry together, and you're doing the same and helping people. One of the things that you're asking them to do is find their voice. Kudos to you and all that you do. You're an amazing person.
That means a lot, and thank you. You're going to make me choke up. Thank you. I just know what it is to feel isolated and to not, I think about it, it gets me choked up. I had my son, and it was like the first time we couldn't see my own family for Christmas. Here it is, like I have a 2-year-old at home, and he got to a point where he didn't want to see grandma and grandpa on screen, because it meant that he wasn't seeing them and hugging them in person. That is like, we went through that, all of us as a collective soul. And I feel that people really need to like take stock and going, we went through it. So people are not going through in the industry that I'm in, entertainment right now. So why not bring it together? So you feel like you have connective tissue. You feel like you have that connection with someone. And you don't feel so dreadfully alone. And so I did that with Twitch, and I started out, I was on Instagram, and it was some of the same people that were on that call the other day. They were like, oh my God, Raquel's on. At least, we can chat. And it was Instagram Live. And we kept getting booted. And then a friend of mine, a good friend I grew up with in high school, she said, because I'm very vocal about when I need to emote online, as you've seen. And so I said, I don't understand it. I'm willing to pay the money for can I just put in so I can play, my 80s music and let people feel good? A friend of mine said, go on Twitch. Just go on Twitch. I guarantee you, there's a lot of DJs on there now. There's gamers, but it'll be a good platform for you. And I never went back. We just celebrate our 4th year. But through that, we have created such an incredible crew. When you come into the room, you'll see it is like one big virtual hug where everybody, we bust on. It's like being in my Italian Jewish home. It's like we bust on each other, you joke on each other, and then you also cry with each other. We've had a couple of moments where Olivia Newton-John passed, and I just went on. I didn't say a word. I just put on all Olivia Newton-John music, or Fletch from Depeche Mode, or Tina Turner, and I just allow people to emote, and I create a safe space for that. So that started 4 years ago, and I feel so invigorated when I go on. It's literally, I joke around and say, well, I met my muse at the decks, because I never know. Unless it's like a 1-hour raid train, I really don't know what I'm going to play other than it might be an 80s night or a house night, and then I let it figure itself out after that. But what I created was a place for people to feel safe, to feel welcome, to feel connected, and that is my own energy back to me, where that's my mental therapy, is being able to know that I've uplifted people at the end of a set.
How amazing is that? I mean, it's I applaud you for that. I mean, that kind of leads me into like our last couple of questions. But, Dennis, I just want to say, and Raquel, I want to say, I'm so happy that you came. Dennis has talked a lot about you. And for me, it's been a pleasure to meet you, at least virtually. And I can feel the warmth coming off of you. And you're just an amazing person.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Of course. I mean, my pleasure. With that, this is the Apex Lifestyles podcast, right? And one of the things that Dennis and I are curious about is like, how do you define your apex? What does that mean to you?
For me, it's doing something that my kids can be proud of. It's living my life abundantly, and that doesn't always mean financially. It is knowing that even if one person was uplifted at the end of the day with work that I might have created, like Dennis knowing how much he loved Kings from Queens, and I'd given him a heads up, like, it's coming and you're going to be so excited. That energy of knowing that I've made someone happy with either content I've created or a chance for people to meet. I had my proud moment last week of knowing that 55 people came and did the questions and showed up and just wanted to be with other people. I had a hand in that. So when I look back on my IMDb, or I look back on shows or talent I've created, and I think I just sit there like, I'm proud to be in the shadows of that, because I was able to break through the clutter for somebody and make them feel like they could have their authentic moment, however that presented.
Unbelievable. Here's my bonus question. How do you stay driven and maintain that moxie every day?
I'm not going to lie. I can't sugarcoat it. I've had a down week. I wrote about it yesterday. I keep trying and trying and trying, and there's just some months where it doesn't catch, the engine doesn't kick over. But I allow myself that feeling, because you have to. You can't push it down, because then it just manifests in terrible ways. So I allow myself to have that. Like, I had a big ugly cry with my husband yesterday, he'll tell you. And I just said, I don't understand it. I don't get it. I try so hard and it's not happening. It's not catching. But I'm also trying to look at it from the other way, go, okay, maybe this is the universe's way of saying, learn a new skill set, work on in the mix, do some other things, and those moments will come. So it's having grace with yourself to allow yourself to cry, to emote, to be pissed, to be furious, to go, why not me? Why isn't this happening for me? I can't even believe I'm not doing this. But then if I'm also not creating, I'm not living. So I always go back to that moment.
So cool.
Amazing. You're amazing.
So,
Thank you.
Raquel, you are an amazing person, and the fact that you're helping people, creatives in all different aspects to reach their apex, and the fact that you're able to do it, simultaneously for yourself, I think that's just perfect. Where can people find you? And if you are, out there trying to reach out to someone who's a creative and they want to kind of connect with you, how do they do that?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can definitely, if you Google or LinkedIn search Raquel Bruno Drive, you can find me there. On Instagram, I'm Raquel Loves Drive on Instagram. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on Twitch, if you want to just have some fun, Wednesday night are 80s and punk and new wave. Saturday nights is electro, hip hop, and house. You can find me at twitch.tv/DJ AVIVA. And then just basically find me through there. I also have a YouTube channel. I've been also putting out some new content, talking about how do you clean your records. I went to Japan. We did an unboxing of all the great things, the beautiful, cute things that come out of Japan, but also talking about just lots of different things. So I'm building up my own content as well. But you can definitely find us on Twitch, and then for Workspace, you can find me on LinkedIn for sure. And it's driveentertainmentgroup.com, but we're working on a new website.
Raquel, by the way, you just act like you did a trip to Japan. Who were you with in Japan? You just like you forget
I was
to
there
mention.
for fun.
Yeah.
No, I worked with a friend of mine who I work with on Disney. Her and I have been talking, that's the thing. It's like things don't always happen immediately. We talked last year when they first launched it. It was for Crunchyroll. It was the Anime Awards. And I had the amazing honor of bringing Megan the Stallion to Japan because she's such a huge anime fan. And she closed the show, and it's really exciting to see her be in that space that she loves. Her passion is anime. She loves to wear outfits that are, influenced by anime. So it was really, I took full advantage of being there, and I took a couple of days to actually, because it's been on my bucket list since I'm a kid. I've been a Hello Kitty fan forever. I've loved everything Transformers, like Scooby-Doo, all from Japan. So, I also went record shopping while I was there. I had to, but it was a really brilliant, manifestation. It's something I've been thinking about and dreaming about, and actually dreamt about. In my dreams, I kept seeing this amazing visual of a pagoda for years. And sure enough, I have a photo I should send you to Dennis, where there it was. I turned a corner in Kyoto, and it was right above me, and I went, and there's my dream. So I think you have to just keep at your dreams. You can't and I say this, and I end on this. Don't allow anyone else to write your song or your script or your anything. If it's something you want to do, you just have to do it. I mean, look at the two of you. You've created an amazing podcast, and it's not your day job, and you're doing it because you love creating and finding the voice with people, finding their apex. That is creativity. And we always have to, whatever it is, whether it's cooking or the way you decorate your house, it's all creativity. And we just have to make sure that is our authentic voice every day, if that's what you want to do.
Raquel, in closing, one of the things I always say to my students is when you choose something in life, make sure you do something where you wake up every morning, no matter what the day is, that it makes you happy. Every time you talk about what you do, you smile, it's you're ear to ear. And that just, I know on the other side of the glass, we feel it, we see it. And honored to know you, honored to have you on the show. And a lot more coming. Everybody get ready for this one. This is a great, great interview, and appreciate you.
I'm really excited, and I thank you for letting me, voice what I've done and what I do. And hopefully anyone who has received this, audibly will be inspired somehow to not ever give up on your dreams. Doesn't matter if you're 15 or 55. If you want to do something, you just have to do it, and don't let anyone dictate anything else to you. Just do what you want to do. That's in your North Star.
Well, thank you, Raquel, for coming in and sharing your incredible journey. I'm really impressed by everything that you've done in your career. It's really amazing.
Thank you.
I love that you're searching for your apex and living it and helping other people live theirs. And that's how you get there. And I love it. And thank you, Dennis, for introducing us here. And Raquel, thank you so much. It's been a distinct pleasure to have you here today. And for all the listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, and that helps us all out a little bit here and keeps the mission moving forward. So with that, Dennis, I think, as always,
It's go time.
it is go time. Thank you so much.